after the events. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Elsa Arnold. Elsa is a second-year student studying education. She's also an advocate for positive mental health and well-being. She is a member of several different charity youth boards which work in this field. Having faced her own challenges as a teenager, she launched a number of local initiatives aimed at supporting members of the community, including a greatly successful virtual Wellbeing Week, which launched last year. This year, Elsa has begun to take on a series of challenges in aid of the charity Young Minds, in the hope to raise money for an amazing cause and inspire hope for other young people struggling at the moment. So over to you, Elsa.
Fab, thank you. Can I share my screen? Is that okay? Yeah, awesome. Let me do that. Just let me know if you can see it. Yeah, fab. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm not really going to introduce myself further than that. I'm Elsa, I'm 19. But I wanted to start with a question. And that question is, what are you proud of yourself for? I'm starting with it for a reason. It will become clear. But I just want you to think about it. You're not going to tell me this is like a personal thing for you. Could be anything, that you're really proud of yourself for achieving. Mine is just any excuse to say that I climbed a mountain. Mine is getting to the top of Ben Nevis in July. So I did the National Three Peaks Challenge in July, and that was one of the proudest moments of my life because it was so hard. But yes, a really amazing experience and something that I'm incredibly proud of. But for some people, that will look like nothing. For some people who climb a mountain every weekend, that will look like whatever. Sure, she climbed Ben Nevis, whatever. For other people, that will look like, whoa, look at that. I probably couldn't do that. I don't know. If you think that, you can do it. Give it a go. But neither of those things matter, because it was a really important, proud moment for myself. And that's what matters. How it made me feel is what matters. So think of something you're proud of. It could be that, I don't know, you just finished a really difficult reading for something at university, or that you got out of bed this morning. Sometimes that's really difficult. It could be anything. It could be that you started an essay. That's usually the hardest thing to do. So yeah, anything that you're proud of yourself for doing. Just have a think about it. This person in this photo is very happy and very pleased with herself. And actually, I should say that this challenge was, I was fundraising for Mind on this challenge. So that was a kind of extra element to it. But she wasn't always like that. And I've not always been as kind of, I don't know, bubbly and upbeat as I am now. And when I was first asked to do this talk, I was going to start with a different photo, because when I was asked to do it, I had just done a big Instagram post and Facebook post that went a bit crazy. And it was with this photo, if this moves along. It was with this photo. And I thought I would originally start with this photo, but then I thought I wanted to start with something a bit more positive. I think both are important. And I'm going to share as well the first bit of what went with the post, like the caption, the first bit of the caption that went with this post, which was this. So the fact that I struggled at school was never really a secret, but the extent to which I struggled was. I experienced bullying and generally found a lot of pressures of being a teenager today overwhelming and difficult to deal with. When I was 14, I began self-harming and I felt completely out of control with it. When I was 15, I was in so much pain I knew I couldn't live through it anymore. One day I woke up and knew it would be my last. A teacher not giving up on me saved my life that day. No one ever knew. So that's a bit deep, but really important. And this was really how I spent most of my time at school, and I really, really didn't think I would be sitting here today. I didn't think I would sit my GCSEs. I was with life. But obviously something changed, and something happened, and something got me to where I am now. But something I've had to learn, especially over the last few months, is that actually both of these people I'm proud of both of these people, and both of these people are the same people. And I think often we try and kind of run away from, I don't know, negative things, maybe understandably. But I'm really proud of both people in these photos, and I'm really proud that both of them have made me who I am right now. So yeah, but I'm sure you can imagine that I do see them as well as very different points in my life, and as kind of a million miles away from each other, but nonetheless they're still the same person. But what I want to talk about is what some of the things that helped me, and some of the things that got me from one to the other. And also I should say that the sad photo wasn't actually taken when I was 14, because I couldn't be bothered to charge my phone and find a sad photo of me when I was 14. So that was actually from last year. But I think that just shows as well that you can go through all of that, you can come out the other end, but you're still going to have bad days, and it's still going to be difficult. But anyway, some things that helped me. So my first one is expressing myself, and I really hope that some of you are able to take some of these and maybe apply them to yourself. Like, these are very personal to me, but you can use them in your own way. My first thing is expressing myself. This was like the most important thing to me, and it was mostly important because I'll talk about this as well, but it was mostly important because I really struggled to express myself with words. I really struggled to talk. So I'm sure you can imagine how I'm feeling right now when I have to talk. So expressing myself, being able to communicate in a different way. And that could be like, you could do that really privately. You could be like, I don't actually do dance classes anymore, but I love just like jumping around my room to my feel good playlist, and that is a way that I express myself just for me. I think that's what helps me. So it could be something really personal that you just do in your own private space. It could be expressing yourself in some really like artistic way, or through whatever. It could be anything. That really helped me, expressing myself and being creative and finding things that allow me to explore how I felt in a different way other than using words. Mood journals. This is a funny one. It's not a funny one, but it's an interesting one, but it did really help me. And I wanted to put it in because I know Audrey's going to talk a lot more about like practical tools and things, but this is something that really helped me because it allowed me to sort of recognize what things actually made me feel good and what things weren't making me feel good. And it's hard to recognize that sometimes. And the way I did this, I've put these pictures are just from like Google, but the way I did it was, I was actually introduced to it by a person who, okay, let me backtrack a bit. I skipped a bit of my story. Let me backtrack. When you're referred for counselling, a lot of the time you have to go through an assessment first to then be sort of directed in towards the right type of counselling for you. And I was actually introduced to these mood journals by the person who did my assessment, who was an interesting person. She gave me this table and said, write down, like track this for a couple of weeks and then come back, because it was a 2-part assessment, and then come back and we'll look at it together. And just so you can see, and it was sort of like you rank each day or something, or you rate the day or something, and then you write down the things that made you feel that way, so that you could kind of notice patterns. And I did notice patterns. I noticed that there were people that I was spending time with that every time I spent time with them, I didn't feel good. And that was really interesting, but so valuable. Yeah, so, and the thing is with mood journals, you can do them in lots of different ways. She gave it to me in a table. I actually like the table approach. You could do it really creatively. You can do it however you like. But what I really want to say with this is there is no right or wrong. And the reason I want to say that is because she was an interesting person. I look back on this moment and think, I don't know how she said this, but between the two assessments, I happened to have an amazing experience with a charity who I had the best time with. And so one day in the mood journal, I was really rock bottom, and I had there was zero, hope wasn't even an idea in my head. That was it. And then the next day I met this charity, and oh my gosh, I actually felt happy for the first time in about 2 years, and I was so excited by it. It wasn't I went from 0 to 100 straight away, but there was something there, and I was so over the moon with how I felt. And I wrote this in the journal, and the lady doing the assessment said that that was wrong, and she told me that I couldn't feel happy straight away, the next day. That wasn't possible. And I look back on that now and I just think, how does that make any sense? How did I? And I feel really sad that I ever believed that, because she, as a 15-year-old girl sitting there, you're going to believe what a professional tells you. And the fact that a professional told me that is rubbish. So there is no right or wrong with this. It's your space. It's your thing. Let it. You can be sad and then be happy. You can be whatever. Your feelings are valid, basically, is what I'm saying. So use it to let yourself see what works for you. Charity work. This is a really personal one for me. It won't be something that you'll all kind of jump on, but this is a really personal one for me. I love the charity work that I do, and like I just said, working with a charity was the thing that gave me the most hope and made me believe I could get better. I think it's really important to have, especially as students, to have other things other than work and other than writing essays that make us feel really fulfilled and happy and keep us going. And this is what keeps me going, and I love everything about it. For me, it's being able to use my experiences to help other people. And I've also put on here a screenshot of a blog that I wrote. I do quite a lot of blog writing for charities now, and that is something that I really enjoy, and I think writing things down sometimes does help. And that doesn't mean you're going to share it on a charity website with everybody, but might be something to think about. And actually, I chose to put that one, a letter to my 5-year-old self, because that was an interesting one to do, and yeah, really brought some stuff up for me. So maybe you might want to write a letter to your 5-year-old self. It's quite an interesting exercise. Okay, talking. I'm going to whiz through the last bits because I know I'm going to run out of time. But talking, haven't put anything around this one because talking is important, and I think ultimately it's the thing we all want to get to. We all want to be able to tell someone how we feel, and we all want to be able to be able to sit down with somebody and express ourselves through words. But it's one of the most difficult things to do, I think. I find it so hard, and all of those other things helped me be able to sit down and talk to people. So what I want to say with this one is, be patient with yourselves. We are constantly told that we need to talk, that we need to open up. It's really hard. So please, don't feel like, oh my God, I'm really struggling, I need to go and I need to talk to somebody. And because then if you can't do it, what you'll do is get frustrated with yourself and be like, oh my gosh, I can't, I don't know what to say, I don't know what words to use, and that's annoying. And then you beat yourself up more about it. So be patient with yourselves, use other things to work out how you feel, and the words will kind of come. Yeah, I think there's a bit too much pressure on talking, even though it's really important. We want to get there, but there's a lot of pressure on having to know what to say. This is my last one. And I put this in last minute because of the winter wellbeing focus. I think during winter, we don't really like going outside is probably one of the last things we want to do or think about. But I really do think it's important. And actually, I was thinking about this earlier, and I thought, what I used to do, and maybe some other people can relate to this, is think, oh, I'm going to go outside now and just clear my head, and then everything will be fine. And I'll just, I don't know, like there was some magical thing that happens outside where everything gets better, and then you come home and it's like, okay, right, I can do this now, it's all good. And then it's frustrating when that doesn't happen, and when you're not kind of, you don't have some big moment in your park or something. I think getting outdoors is more about just being in a different space, and yeah, clearing your head, but you have to be kind of patient with it, I think, and you have to kind of just let yourself be, but not try to feel something from it. Just let yourself be there, because a big mistake I always used to make was kind of being like, okay, I need to feel this way though. I have to go outside because this is what being outside makes you feel. I've learned that's not really true. There isn't a thing that it makes you feel. It's however it makes you feel. And you might go outside and still be worrying about everything because you can't get out of your head that easily. But it's a different space, and the more you kind of push yourself to step away from your computer or get out of your house or whatever it is, it will make a difference. So yeah, there's some things that have helped me, are still helping me, and ultimately all of those things gave me hope. And as Jenny said, I'm doing a series of challenges at the moment for Young Minds. So I didn't say, but I'm on Young Minds' youth panel. Oh, actually, I tell a lie. I'm not. I was on their youth panel for 2 years. I'm now an activist for them, which is probably important. So yeah, I'm doing a series of challenges for them. I would really recommend going, if you are, going and having a look at my Instagram, because I've really whizzed through stuff. But there is a bit more about me, about my story. You'll find that post that I shared the first segment from on my Instagram, which will also explain why I'm doing the challenges, what I hope will come out of them, and basically it will just be a bit more of a bit of a better way to get to know who I am, because I have just whizzed through a lot of stuff, and please feel free to get in touch, and yeah, it'd be nice to hear from some of you. Oh, you know what, my phone's just lit up next to me with all of you following me. How lovely. Fab, that's me. Let me stop sharing. Here we go.
Thank you very much, Elsa, and thank you for sharing some really personal points for you as well. I think that's really brave, and like you said, very difficult thing to actually start talking about. So I think that everyone will really appreciate having you talking about that and just showing them that it's not them on their own, that other people have those problems too, or sort of everyone's got something. So I think that it's really valuable that you shared that. And Audrey, I'm sure, will be going through a really valuable points about how to deal with situations like that, or sort of stress and things. And so I will hand over to Audrey, who has already spoken to us once before this year, and I'm sure that some of you saw Audrey talk then, and I'm very, very pleased to have her back again to talk to you again.
Thank you so much. I mean, gosh, how do I follow that? Well, this is how I'm going to try. That's your alarm in the morning. What do? Do you press snooze, roll over and go to sleep? Or do you get up, grab your phone, scroll through other people's psychodramas and get frustrated over the things that you can't do anything about? Or do you maybe choose to get involved in some of the things that you know make you feel good? There are two key messages from what I'm going to say. The first is, it is not the big choices that you make that shape your life. It is not the job, the relationship, the house, those big things. It's the little choices we make every single day that shape who we are. Because even if we take that job, we get into that relationship, we go and move into that house, it's still us that decides, shall I do that or shall I carry on scrolling? Shall I have that extra slice of chocolate cake or shall I go out for that run? It's us that goes with us the whole time. So focus on the little choices. The second key message from today really is something that I've always taught, but since working with Elsa, and it is such a privilege to work with her because she has reframed a lot of the ways that I go about things. But the second point is exactly as she has said, learning and self-development is a pick and mix. Experts, people who've been through things, inspirational speakers, TED talkers, all of us, we can all give you ideas. The more you learn, the more you try out, the more you have in your artillery, great. But use what works for you. Just because somebody else says something does not mean you have to do it. And if you decide to do it, you might find your own way of doing it. And it absolutely broke my heart when Elsa talked about how somebody in the caring professionals actually used a technique and said, you can't use it that way. Absolutely ridiculous. We are all individuals and we are allowed to feel as we feel. We are allowed to be who we want to be. We need to recognize there are consequences, but let's start by reframing the word consequence. The consequence is often a natural follow-on from something. It is not necessarily bad. It can be wonderful. So whenever people say, let's talk about consequences, don't always think it's negative. Just see it as, well, if I do not exercise and I do overeat, for example, I am likely to put on weight. That's just a consequence. That's what happens. If I go to the gym more or if I go out for a run, I may lose weight. That's a consequence as well. So think about things in that particular way when it comes to choices. And what I want to give you today are a series of different things you may choose, different practical tools you may choose to boost yourself in terms of your energy and to minimize stress. Now, why do we need to minimize stress? Well, if any of you have been looking at my board, you might have been looking at this post-it and thinking, what's that all about? What is she doing? What's going on there? That's what stress does to us. Instead of focusing on all the space around the post-it, all of the potential opportunities, all of the things other people are saying, you're thinking you're zoned in. What is that about? Nothing. It's about nothing. It's not even to do with you. That's what stress does. And the problem is when we are that focused on the thing that's stressing us, which we may not actually have any control over, it becomes very easy for other people to start influencing us in ways we don't want to be influenced. That's how things like fake news is spread. If you don't believe me, give this a go. I would like you to say this word out loud with me or in your head. So you don't need to unmic, but just have a think. 1, 2, 3, silk. And what does a cow drink? If anyone said milk, the answer is water. Nothing happens to a cow if they drink milk. It's all okay. But the point is, that is how easy it is for me to just prime you into saying something which is effectively wrong just by introducing a thought into your head. That's also another consequence of being stressed. We focus on things that don't necessarily serve us. One more example, just in case. I'd like you to hold out your hands as if you're about to clap, okay? And what I want you to do is I want you to clap when I say 3. So when I count to 3, I want you to clap. So are you ready? 1, 2, 3. How many of you clapped when I clapped? If you did, again, that's another way of how, when we're too focused on certain things, our minds become much smaller. We don't use their full capacity, and then we begin to feel overwhelmed. If any of you remembered that a cow drinks water, and if you also were able to clap when I said clap, brilliant. It means you already have some of that ability to see the space around the stress and find that headspace at the time you need it. And hopefully some of these tools will allow that to grow a little bit bigger. So what today's focus is all about. Good. Yes, good, Peter. Excellent. I'm glad you clapped on the count of 3 as opposed to when I did. But this is the point. What today's all about, if you've seen these before, these are little ketchup pots. You might have seen them in IKEA or McDonald's. Did anyone know that these ketchup pots represent how much of the capacity of our brain we're using when we're stressed, when we're so zoned in on that Post-it note? And if we are able to find some headspace, you will see there is so much more capacity to be had. That's what I want you to find today. Any of these techniques, they may work for you, they may not. If they don't work for you, don't worry, move on to the next one. There are many. And the way I want to tackle dealing with stress and boosting our winter well-being is simply by understanding what stress is and what we're actually trying to do. Stress is a natural physical response to a challenge. We actually need that feeling of stress sometimes because it helps us achieve more. It helps us do things that we never thought possible. It is what partly will have helped Elsa climb Ben Nevis. It is what helps us stand in front of you and give an energizing talk. If we don't have that stress hormone flowing, if we don't have the adrenaline, this could be quite dull. So stress can be actually a very positive thing. The problem is our bodies are not designed to remain in that state of stress. They're not designed to remain with the stress hormone cortisol flowing through it for that great length of time. And if we begin to get used to it, if we start thinking, oh, well, I feel a bit on edge, but I'll just deal with it, that's okay. That's where we start suffering from chronic stress, which is that low level of stress that stays with us. And so stress busting techniques are all there to do 3 things. The first is to minimize and reduce the amount of cortisol that is allowed out by our bodies at the time of crisis. So that actually helps because if there's less out, there's less to disperse. The second is actually to help us disperse that feeling a lot faster and return to our state of calm. And the third is to help us use the space that we've been able to find when we're no longer focused on that one thing in order to thrive. So with that in mind, here are some of the ideas that you can use. And the thing you need to remember is very much, as Elsa's been saying, not everything is going to work for you. All of these tips and tools are best practiced outside the point of crisis. So to pick up on what Elsa said about going outdoors and something magical happening outside, I can tell you there is a tiny bit of magic that does happen outside. Actually, what happens is our brain is stimulated by the sunlight, which produces vitamin D naturally, and it also stimulates the production of serotonin. That's a feel-good hormone. That's a feel-good, a way to feel good naturally. However, going outside once to clear your head is not going to make any difference. That's a little bit like going into a gym and saying, yeah, I can press 200 pounds easy without practicing. However, if you practice some of these techniques outside the point of crisis, if you build your mental and emotional fitness In the same way as you build and you practice and you commit to physical fitness, then at the point of crisis, maybe a little bit of deep breathing is going to work. Otherwise, I can guarantee you, if everything is raining down on you, telling yourself calm down, that's not going to make the slightest bit of difference. In actual fact, it's going to make you more cross. So any of these techniques, try them outside the point of crisis and use the ones that work. So first of all, to minimize the production of cortisol, research has shown that laughter is a great way to do that. So as long as you don't get caught down the YouTube rabbit hole, funny cat videos, they're okay. Hanging out with friends, that's another great thing that also reduces production of cortisol, having healthy relationships. But of course, the problem here is I've got a few toxic relationships as well as the healthy ones. There are people with whom you feel worse when you spend time with them compared to others. Well, try this little exercise to start with. And this is a simple gratitude practice. This is something that you might find in a mood journal, but if you don't want to use a written down tool, this is a practical non-written tool. What I'd like you to do is just stretch and think about some person that you are grateful to have in your life. That's all. Just got a person. Stretch your legs out now. Think of a thing you're grateful to have in your life. It might be your work, it might be your uni, it might be a pet, might be a house, might be a car. And now shake yourself out and think about something you're looking forward to doing today. That, if you do that exercise every day for say 7 days, you will find patterns. Some things and some people will appear and others will not. What you then do with that information is you spend more time engaging with the things and the people who appear more often, even if it is catching up via an online platform if you can't see them in person, or just dropping them a line, because then when the more exhausting people come along, you can easily say to them, you know what, sorry, I'm already busy, and it will be the truth. Or alternatively, if you cannot avoid the exhausting people, by spending time doing the things and with the people who make you feel good, it reduces the amount of cortisol produced when you go and see the more exhausting ones. So again, that is very much about minimizing. Another thing you can think about is recognizing your triggers. Now, this is partly meditative, so it can also help to relax the body. But in the same way as a mood journal can help you recognize triggers, try the body scan. The body scan is simply when you're relaxed, perhaps lying down, going from your toes through to your shins, knees, hips, pelvis, torso, shoulders, down the arms, hands, fingers, face, and head, and focusing on each part of the body, deciding, is it tense? Is it relaxed? And by doing that, you will already find out whether your body's trying to tell you something. Simply by scanning it, you'll be able to feel what's tense, what's not. And if you don't yet know the difference between tense and relaxed, then actively, as you do the body scan, tense and relax your toes, tense and relax your ankles, and feel the difference. This way, if we get a little bit more in touch with what our body is telling us, our individual signs, then we can use that information to take our next steps. Emotionally too, you can use a similar technique. What you can do is you can think about a time where you were really happy and feel where in the body that memory seems to come from. Sometimes people who feel very, very happy, they say, oh, I can feel it in my chest. Then change that emotion. A time where you felt disappointed. Now, for me, when I feel disappointed, I actually feel that in my chest. So it varies from different person to different person. But when you can recognize where you feel happy, disappointed, angry, lucky, in love, positives and negatives, you will be able to read better what your body is trying to say. Because sometimes our body, almost like our intuition, gives us those little nudges, those little taps to tell us when things are great or when they're not. And the problem is we've just got used to not listening to them. And I think that's a shame, because the more information we get from ourselves, the more we can use that to improve our choices in life. So that's recognizing our triggers. Another thing will be to minimize the effects of stress as they actually happen. There are a number of techniques you can do this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a couple of them just on a screen, just because it's a lot nicer to see this than it is for me to try and draw it, because my drawing, it will help with laughter, but it's not very good. So the Zentangle. A Zentangle is a really lovely way of creating a state of calm. And it is simply, you draw a rectangle and you fill it with whatever shapes you like. It is another way of expressing yourself creatively. And again, another thing you might be able to learn from this particular doodle task is if you find yourself using really heavy strokes or really sharp lines, that Zentangle may be trying to tell you something as well. Exactly as Elsa said, talking does not always come first. Sometimes you need to find another way of recognizing that there is something you need to express. Then you need to be able to express it. Then maybe it becomes easier to talk. And whilst a Zentangle can be used for a very blissful and mindful experience, it can also be used if you're able to recognize, hang on a minute, I'm using really strong brush strokes here. What happened in this recent past that I might be stressed about? It can be a great way of recognizing when you're feeling stressed. This is another lovely technique, and you can do this right now if you want to. This is known as the circle of concern exercise, and it's a very common one, so you may have used it before, but the idea of this exercise is you write down all the things that you're worried about in the circle of concern. And you will notice there are some things which you could do something about. There are some things which you absolutely can't. And there are some things which are a little bit in between. Now, this is something I often do at induction sessions at uni, and people like to test me in those sessions, and they will say things like, oh yes, I'm really concerned about climate change. Great, yeah, absolutely. Now, there's not a lot that we can do, perhaps, unless we are have enough, I guess, momentum as Greta Thunberg to do with climate change, except there are little things we can do. For example, we can recycle. We can only boil the amount of water that we need to have our cup of tea. There are little things we can do. So once you have written down, you've almost done a brain dump of all the things you're worried about in the circle of concern, draw arrows and move the things you actually have control over into the circle of influence. And then, before you feel too overwhelmed with all of the things that you're worried about, pick something out of the circle of influence that you can actually do and go and do it. Other ways of dealing with some of the wider problems can be things like charity work. It can be things like donating. It can be things like blogging and getting your feelings that you're really passionate about out into the world, getting those opinions heard. Those are other ways that are under our control. But again, unless we have a visual, unless we really can see what's going on and have an opportunity to unpick it, all of this can feel very overwhelming. And very much like that little post-it in the middle of the piece of paper, we just start focusing on that and become a little bit paralyzed, and we are unable to do anything useful. Now, another thing which I'm going to add on, because this is something which, if you came to my last session, you will have had this, but this exercise, these next two exercises, really address some of the concerns you're worried about right now. So I was watching the things that you're anxious about, and these two next exercises really, really work for that. They're not in the workbook, so try them with me now. One is drawing a wheel. Okay, now this is the one that tackles finding a work-life balance or uni-life balance. This tackles uni work and feeling very overwhelmed with uni work. It tackles any form of well-being and a sense of how do I find who I am and feel authentic and feel good about myself. This is actually known as the Wellbeing Wheel, but this is how I want you to use it. So for those of you who are concerned about uni work, that's your focus. What is your goal? I want to get a first-class degree or whatever that might be, okay? It might be, if that's not your goal, it might be I want a work-life balance. Now, you're going to complete this wheel differently depending on what it is you want to get out of this, okay? But you can draw up to around 8 segments. Now, I'm going to stop here because for some people, especially if you're looking at work-life balance, certain things may take up more energy. You might want to devote more time to certain things, and I'll explain what I mean. So let's deal with work-life balance first. Work-life balance, you want to have time for your family perhaps, and maybe family is really important to you. So you actually want to be able to spend like double the time with them. Maybe your friends are really important as well. So they fill up about half your wheel. Then you've got maybe work, maybe you've got uni, maybe you've got something that you do outside uni, an extracurricular. So maybe you go to a club and so on. Now, if you're doing this for your degree, you might again decide to do something that looks a bit more like this. You might have to say, well, I have to study, okay, so you've got accountancy, you've got banking, maybe you've got law with that, maybe you've got marketing. I'm not sure. I'm just putting down different modules. I'm putting down dissertation. Maybe you need to get involved with the student union and so on. Whatever you put in there, it doesn't matter. It's significant to you. But then what you have to do is, on a scale of 0 to 10, is be really honest and decide how much you're actually devoting of your time and energy to those different things. So right now, you've already identified that for your work-life balance, these things are most important, but it might turn out that actually you're not spending much time with family. Maybe it's only 3 or 4. Maybe friends you are actually spending quite a lot of time with, so that's 6 or 7. But maybe work, you're spending a lot of time. And maybe uni, you're too tired, so you're only spending a little bit of time. Same thing with your first-class degree. Maybe you know you love accountancy, so that's great, but you hate law. Oh, with a passion. Maybe you're really getting underway with your 3rd-year project or dissertation, but you actually haven't done much work on marketing. What this allows you to do is, first of all, it allows you a visual representation of where your time is going. But secondly, what it allows you to do is, when you are feeling out of balance, very much like what can I control, what can't I control in the circle of influence, what can I influence, what can't I, you now know exactly the areas where you can place your focus. So with your degree, there's no point doing more accountancy. You're already good at that. And I know it's tempting to go and do it because it makes you feel good, because you feel accomplished, because you can do it. But actually, putting a little bit more effort into these subjects, just to push them up. They don't have to be 9 or 10, but at least push them up to 3s and 4s, and then 5s and 6s, and then 7s and 8s. That is going to help you feel a little bit better about all of the things that you need to do. So this is one way of dealing with that work-life balance. And I like using this. I personally use it for well-being. And I revisit it every 3 months, and I look at how my priorities have changed, and I look at where my focus is. And it gives me a little bit of a reset, because the whole thing about anything to do with mental health is a lot of the tools and techniques are all to do with getting what's in your head out of your head and allowing you a way of looking at it. When you can look at it, you can actually deal with it. Now, that's one exercise. The second exercise, which is also helpful, is known as the Spices Challenge. Now, at the end of Elsa's talk, she gave a lot of different examples of the things that made her feel good. This is an issue when it comes to self-care. A lot of us don't really know what it is. And I'd like to actually expand on that, because it's not your fault. So often, adults tend to say things like, oh, just look after yourself a bit more, or, oh, just concentrate, just focus. And the truth is, no one's really taught us how. So take focus, for example. You may have used it. You may have used it on yourself. You may say, just concentrate. And then you think, well, how? How do I concentrate? Did you have a lesson in concentration at school? No. But I'll give you a way of concentrating, because unfortunately, what we are very good at is distraction, because of phones and because of having our emails and Netflix on at the same time and trying to have a conversation. We get very practiced at distraction, but here's a way of improving your focus if you want to. And that is simply to, when you speak to somebody tonight, give them your full attention. Practice giving them your full attention. You'll probably find out how difficult it is, but that's a way of practicing your focus. Same thing with self-care. Look after yourself. Okay, how do I do that? Then we might read about it, and then we might listen to people, then we might go on social media, and we will hear things such as spa days or meditation or yoga. And all of those have one thing in common. They're very expensive sometimes. And the second thing they have in common is they take a lot of practice to organize. They take a lot of effort to organize. So this is my challenge to you. Instead of doing what other people say, I want you, the pizza tool is simply the Wellbeing wheel. It's a Wellbeing wheel, or a coaching wheel. If you Google it, you'll see a similar thing. The Spices Challenge is to recognize that each of these letters represents a different type of self-care that we can get involved with. The first S stands for spiritual. And yes, breathing, affirmations, meditation, yoga, those are great ways of improving our spiritual health, should we want to. We don't have to go down that route. Physical is another one. So that's the P. Physical. And physical, exercise, dancing, doing something active. Again, we may not like that, but that's okay, because there are still 4 other choices of self-care that we can have. I is intellectual. And that might be reading a book, attending a webinar, learning something new that we love, that stimulates us, learning a new skill. See, I love this one, is creative. And that can be poetry or music, or even choosing what to wear and expressing yourself that way. It can be landscaping or creating a window box. There are so many different ways that you can actually bring creativity into your life, and all of them are very, very engaging. E, emotional. Here, I'm generally talking about that one-to-one, reconnecting with people, our friendships. So that's another way of building up our energy, another way of making us feel good, another way of reducing the production of the stress hormone or minimizing its effects. And then the last S is social, and that will be getting involved in a cause or a purpose or a charity. So as you can see, there are so many different things you could try. And one challenge, because I did call it a Spices Challenge, is that you can put numbers 1 to 6 into a hat and just draw one out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you have to do one element of self-care that is that falls within that particular category. Another easier way, if you don't want to use this, is simply to recognize when you're doing something that you enjoy. So, for example, I know when I'm reading, I really enjoy it. And then the next thing is, does it make you feel excited? And does it lift you up? Does it energize you? Or does it relax you? The reason why that distinction is really important is, again, because a lot of people say, oh, listen to music, it will calm you down. Actually, music energizes me. So you need to know what works for you. And the reason I say energizer or relaxer is because that's what we need when it comes to self-care. We are either feeling overwhelmed and anxious, and therefore doing something that energizes us is just going to tip us even further over to that side. We probably need a relaxer to bring us back to balance. Or we're feeling down and apathetic and not wanting to do anything, and they're relaxing, not going to help too much. So it's better to know, well, okay, I'm feeling down, an energizer is going to bring me back to balance. So the reason why you explore different types of self-care is to just give yourself lots of different options to know what works for you that makes you feel good. And then if you can narrow that down further and recognize this energizes me or this relaxes me, you will be much more effective when it comes to choosing what you need to do at that particular moment. So these two tools hopefully answer some of those questions. Others, I know one of them stuck out at me, and it was maintaining the physical routine when it gets darker. Now, there are practical ways that you can do this, and I'm going to sound really facetious here. One practical way to carry on running outside in the dark is to get a head torch. I only say that to say that sometimes solutions can be very, very practical. One way of dealing with seasonal affective disorder is to get what's known as a SAD lamp, a seasonal affective disorder lamp, and that it simulates sunlight, and just sitting in that glow for about half an hour really works. They can, I mean, you've got to spend a bit of money, but you can get relatively cheap ones on Amazon. I have one and I really like that. So that's just a practical tool. But there are also more structural, more psychological ways of doing this. And that can be simply reworking your routine. So knowing what it is you have to do and being able to fit those moments of self-care in. One of the best things you can do is schedule in that time for yourself. Schedule in that time for you to carry on your fitness routine, perhaps when it's getting a little bit brighter, and be as strict about protecting that time as you are about time that you spend doing things for other people. Not only does it remind you that you are as valuable as other people, but it does allow you that space to work on yourself. And that becomes really important. And even if you decide I'm not going to go for a run, at least have a cup of tea whilst it's still hot, or do a brain dump, or do something in that time because you have scheduled that time for you. Then, after you've freed up some space, so self-care might minimize the amount of stress that's produced, you've now got a little bit of free time. Please do not fill it with other people's psychodramas. The next thing you also need to do is, once you have found the headspace, know how you're going to use it. One way of using it is the Wellbeing wheel, because you know the areas to focus on. Another way is this lovely exercise here. And this is in your, oh, not the meditation, this one. This one is in your workbooks, because what this allows you to do is it really allows you to identify what's meaningful to you. And if you would like, I will talk you through this exercise. It's a really powerful exercise, and it will reveal something probably quite interesting, but the instructions are in the workbooks, so you can take yourself through this. There's 5 different columns. And I'd like you to imagine 5 spaces. So count this as space number 1 in each of the columns, and then there's 4 other spaces below. I would like you to write down in those spaces objects you need to function. And objects that you need to function are things like, you might need your phone, you might need your laptop, you might need a hairdryer, you might need that's what objects that you need in order to get by in life. You might need your car. Those go in that particular column. And then the next column, it's people who influenced you, people who made you who you are. That can be positive, it can be negative. So don't worry, positive or negative. Then, next column, places that hold happy memories. It might be where you had your first kiss, or it might be a place where you went on holiday. Then goals. There's 5 spaces. They can be lifetime goals, they can be short-term, immediate uni goals. And the final column is memories you want to retain. And they, again, can be positive and negative. I'm not saying you have to get rid of anything that was difficult, because that shapes who you are. Now, I know I'm kind of whizzing through this because of time restrictions, but the next step, even if you haven't completed the whole table, is I want you to remove 5 things, as if you are not going to see those 5 things again. Okay. Now, if you have blank spaces, so if you haven't filled up every space, remove the blank spaces first. Okay. So if you've got 5 blank spaces, you remove the blank spaces first. Next, you remove another 5. It gets harder. It gets harder as you go along. What I tend to find that people do is, yes, they remove the blank spaces. The next thing a lot of people remove, they tend to remove quite a few of the objects. We tend to actually start thinking, I really don't need my hair straighteners. I really don't need my laptop, phone, computer. I know it's difficult, but sometimes you begin to realize people and memories and opportunities are more important, or not, but that's okay. Okay, your answers are okay. There's no right or wrong. So you've removed 10 so far. You need to remove another 4. That's when it gets hard. People start struggling around here. And sometimes, whilst this is only theoretical, this exercise is only in our heads right now, what this helps us do sometimes is it helps us minimize some of the more negative things, because now I'm saying to you, you've got to remove 4 more. There may be a couple of things that you may now choose to let go of, because other things on that list that are still there are more important. That's part of the power of this exercise. So you've removed 5, then 5, then 4, then 4 more, and you are left with 2. It might surprise you what those 2 are. Perhaps somebody is willing to share what 2 are left. And it could be you, it could be parents, it could be books, it could be career, there could be a number of different things that are left, but it might surprise you. I was left with, in my final 3, was one of my very best friends, my career, and my husband. And it surprised me, because I have always thought I'm really career-minded. I'm really ambitious, and that's the thing I really focus on. And it surprised me that 2 of the things I had left at the very end were emotional things, emotional elements. And it turned out that I did in the end remove my very best friend, and then I removed career. So you've got to pick one at the end, and I was left with my husband, with my relationship. And to me, that was one of my most important driving forces. Now, what this exercise does is it allows you to explore the things that are really, really meaningful to you. And it allows you to explore them in a way that the wheel may not allow you to do, because the wheel is very specific. It is very based on what are you focusing on, what do you want in your life. But this asks you to think about a lot of different things in the past, a lot of different things that you have had to consider, and a lot of different things that are affecting you. And so because of that, when you know the things that you want to focus on, that is something that you need to hold on to and try and add into your life whenever you can. So that means, again, if you're feeling out of balance, if you're feeling that you're not quite there, one thing to do is to think about, well, actually, is the thing that's most meaningful to me something I'm doing regularly or not? And that kind of brings me towards the end, and I've got only one more exercise for you. And this exercise is, I mean, you may not question what I'm wearing, but you might perhaps recognize the color scheme if I hold these up. Because my last message is, whatever it is you feel you need, you have the power within you. You have that power all along. And the reason why I know this is because I want you to do the following. I want you to outline, where are you now? Where did I start? Then, I want you to look at how you got there. What motivated you? The highs and lows. The learning. And what you'll find is when you think about where you are now and how wonderful a being you are now and how far you've come, and you compare it to the difficulty that you may have had in the past, you will be able to unpick the things that got you through. Elsa demonstrated with her talk a few of those things that helped her, what motivated her. You will be able to reflect on those highs and lows, and you will be able to re-celebrate those highs, but really remember that you got through the lows. And you will also be able to work out what you learned. And then all you need to do, whenever you are thinking about, well, where do I go to next? What do I do with my life? How am I going to get there? You simply reflect on all of this, because that got you through once. It's going to get you through again. And so with that, it brings me to the end of my time, but to the beginning of yours. If that was a wake-up call, what choices are you going to make? Thank you.
Thank you very much.